What if the single most dangerous moment in all of human history wasn't a battle, wasn't a predator in the dark, wasn't even famine, but something as ordinary as relieving yourself in the wrong place? To us, that sounds almost absurd. We live inside invisible systems that quietly protect us every single day. Clean water arrives through a pipe without a second thought. Waste vanishes with the flick of a handle. Soap waits beside every sink. And sanitation works so smoothly that most of us never notice it's there at all. But for almost the entire span of human existence, none of those protections existed. And in the frozen far north, in the final centuries of the last ice age, something as small and forgotten as human waste could turn into a killer, not slowly, not across generations, but in a matter of days. One mistake, one contaminated stream, one careless choice made too close to camp. That was all it took. And yet somehow, these northern people survived. Season after season, generation after generation, they endured a world that should have erased them. Which means they carried a secret, a way of controlling threats they could not even see, dangers that our own advanced societies still struggle to manage today. And here is the strange part. That secret had nothing to do with weapons, and nothing to do with strength. Hold on to that, because by the end of this story, I'll show you exactly what it was. To understand it, picture a single low shelter, built of wood, hide, and bone, and inside it, an old woman crouched near the fire. She has no title, no written knowledge, but she is the living memory of her entire people. Every hard lesson their ancestors ever paid for in blood is stored somewhere behind her eyes. Remember her, because she matters more than you think. Now travel back with me 12,000 years, to the raw edge of northern Europe, where the last great glaciers are retreating. The wind never rests, and winter rules almost the entire year. Step inside that shelter, and the first thing you notice is how close everything is. An entire extended family pressed together in a space barely large enough to stand grandparents, parents, children, all sleeping shoulder to shoulder, because shared body heat was the only real defense against the cold. But that same closeness carried a hidden cost. Every breath was breathed in common. Every tool passed from hand to hand to hand. And in conditions like that, sickness needs almost no invitation. A parasite riding on unwashed skin, a trace of contamination on a shared cup, a sip of water fouled somewhere upstream, any of it could move through the whole group in silence, long before anyone understood where it had come from. Because, unlike us, they had nothing waiting on the horizon to save them. No medicine, no quarantine, no second chance. And the true weight of that danger wasn't only biological, it was human. When a single hunter fell ill, the whole group edged closer to hunger, because there were fewer hands to bring back food. When an elder weakened and died, it wasn't just a death, it was a library burning to the ground. Decades of hard-won knowledge about where the herds crossed, which plants healed, which winters had nearly ended them, all gone in a matter of breaths. In a community this small, a single outbreak could unravel the fragile balance that kept everyone alive, and so survival could never be left to chance. This is where the archaeology becomes remarkable. When researchers carefully mapped these Ice Age settlements, they didn't find chaotic clusters of shelters thrown across the land. They found order, deliberate, intelligent order. Sleeping areas sat in sheltered centers where the heat could gather. Food preparation was kept apart from the sharp debris of toolmaking. And the waste, the most dangerous element of all, was pushed far away, downhill, downwind, deliberately positioned away from the streams and meltwater the people drank. This was not instinct alone. This was a system. But here is the question that haunts every archaeologist who studies these camps. Rules this precise are rarely invented in comfort. They are almost always paid for. Somewhere in this people's past, something went terribly wrong. A lesson so bitter, it reshaped how they built, where they slept, and how they guarded their water forever after. Hold that thought. We'll return to it. At first, the Arctic climate looks like humanity's greatest enemy. Endless winter, wind that cuts to the bone, months on end below freezing. It would be easy to assume conditions like that made survival nearly impossible. But these Ice Age communities discovered something no one expected. The cold that threatened to kill them could also protect them. When temperatures held below freezing, human waste didn't seep and spread the way it would in a warmer world. It froze almost instantly, locked in place before it could ever reach the water. Frozen waste could be lifted, carried, and buried far from camp before it turned dangerous. And there was a deeper gift hidden in the cold. The freezing months shattered the life cycles of the parasites and worms that thrived in warmth. Bacteria slowed to a crawl, insects vanished. The organisms that would have caused a sanitation crisis in a warmer land simply went dormant beneath the ice. And this is where something profoundly human reveals itself. These people learned to take the very thing that was trying to destroy them and turn it into a tool. Winter wasn't only the threat they endured, winter became part of their sanitation system itself. The enemy, understood well enough, became an ally, but cold alone couldn't keep them clean. Modern hygiene is built on water, turn a handle, and it flows. In their world, water was frozen solid for much of the year, and when it did melt, it was far too precious to waste on comfort. Every drop mattered for drinking and cooking and staying alive, so cleanliness had to evolve along entirely different paths. In the warmer seasons, they turned to the landscape itself: soft moss, fibrous leaves, wild herbs, smooth riverstones worn round enough to reuse. And when winter returned, fresh snow became a surprisingly effective tool, drawing away filth with nothing but pressure and cold. What strikes me most is that these were never random choices grabbed in desperation. Certain plants appear again and again across northern sites, and modern science now knows why. Many of them carry natural antibacterial compounds. These people knew nothing of chemistry, yet their collective memory recorded the results with astonishing precision: which plant soothed, which one protected, which one to avoid. Passed from mouth to mouth, remembered across generations, that knowledge slowly hardened into tradition, a living inheritance, written in nothing but memory. We remember fire as humanity's oldest companion for warmth and cooking, but the archaeology from these Ice Age camps reveals a quieter role, just as vital: protection. Stone tools recovered from these sites often show signs of being exposed to heat again and again. Not the occasional scorch of cooking, but the deliberate, repeated placing of tools near the flames. Researchers believe this was intentional, because sustained heat destroys many of the parasites and microbes that cling to a surface. These people couldn't explain the biology, but they noticed what mattered far more. Tools passed through fire seemed to cause fewer infections, wounds healed cleaner, sickness came less often. And plants added another layer still. Certain herbs burned deliberately inside the shelter, the smoke driving away insects and airborne pests that could carry disease through a sealed space. Food became medicine in the same silent way. Chemical analysis of ancient remains reveals wild garlic, bitter herbs, bark, and roots plants we now know carry powerful antibacterial and antiparasitic compounds. And cooking itself was a form of defense. Meat, especially the nutrient-rich organs, was rarely eaten raw. It was cooked thoroughly over the fire, because parasites gathered deep inside organ tissue, and undercooked flesh could let them survive inside the human body, a risk that, for a group this small, could destroy them all. Even the architecture was a survival system, refined across generations. Archaeologists have found small openings placed in walls and roofs with astonishing precision, not gaps left by crude building, but carefully positioned vents. Too much airflow, and the heat drained away in minutes. Too little, and smoke and poisonous gases gathered, slowly suffocating everyone inside. The balance was everything. And the most vulnerable, the elders, the children, were placed where the air was cleanest and the warmth most steady. And now we can finally return to that bitter lesson I promised you. Because rules this exact are always paid for. Somewhere in this people's past, a shelter was sealed too tightly against a killing winter, and by morning the smoke had taken them, the old, the young, the ones who mattered most. That grief did not vanish, it became design. Every vent, every sleeping arrangement, every careful choice was born from a loss someone refused to let happen again. Which means these shelters were never just structures. Each opening was an act of love, a quiet promise, whispered across generations, to protect the weakest among them. Thousands of years later, the descendants of these northern survivors would step into a very different world. They built ships, they crossed open seas, and history would remember them as the Vikings. But beneath the sails and the iron, something far older endured the same survival philosophy that had guided their Ice Age ancestors. On the crowded longships, life unfolded in tight, packed quarters where discipline mattered as much as strength. Waste was managed with care to keep sickness from spreading through the crew. Fresh water, one of the most precious resources on any voyage, was guarded by strict rules. And often, clean snow or fresh ice was safer than water gone stale in the barrels. Whenever a ship made landfall, tools were passed through the heat of nearby fires before the next journey began, and over time, these habits became something more than habits. They hardened into ritual, into taboo, into the unwritten laws of an entire culture: where to place waste, which water to trust, which food to cook longer. The ancestors passed down far more than boats and blades. They passed down a mindset, built on observation, restraint, and endless adaptation. Today, modern sanitation has made these dangers almost invisible. Waste vanishes with the flick of a handle. Clean water flows the instant we ask for it. Disease, once the constant shadow over daily life, now feels distant, almost abstract. But the foundation of all of it didn't begin in laboratories or universities. It began far earlier in cold shelters, carved from earth and stone and bone. And now I can finally tell you the secret I promised at the very beginning. These people didn't survive because they were stronger than us. They survived because they paid attention. They observed the rhythms of their world. They held to hard discipline. They remembered what nearly killed them, and they passed that memory on. Which brings us back to that old woman by the fire, the living memory of her people. She was the secret. She always was. So let me ask you again what I asked at the start. What if the most dangerous moment in human history was never a battle at all but a single careless choice? Those ancient lessons never truly vanished. They live quietly inside us still. So the next time you turn on a tap without a second thought, pause for just a moment, because behind that simple act stands 12,000 years of memory. Here at Shadows of Valhalla, we uncover the forgotten corners of human survival. If this story changed the way you see the past, stay with us. The shadows of our ancestors still hold many secrets yet to be revealed.